This is Abe Tanzer from Awards Buzz. Very excited to be speaking with Alycia Debnam Carey about apple cider vinegar. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. I'm just in Australia. I'm lucky that I was just finishing filming on Monsterverse with Caitlin actually. So I managed to like dip down from Brisbane to like come be with my family for a little bit. So that's really nice.
Wonderful. And we'll revisit that mention at the end of this conversation. Don't worry. Um, how much did you know about this story and about Belle Gibson before finding out about this project?
I definitely knew of it. It was such a cultural touch point here in Australia at the time. Belle Gibson was like, I mean, she was a huge figure, I guess, for Australia in that despite everything that she had done, and all these horrible choices that she'd made, and she was this very impressive person before all of that in terms of like she'd made this cookbook. Like one of my friends had her cookbook and she had, you know, one of the first apps on the Apple Watch. So she was very much a part of the culture here in Australia. But I do remember when her 60 Minutes interview came out because I remember when Sam had written in the script, I was like, I remember seeing that. It was like the pink sweater, the glossy lips, the hair slicked back, like that was seared into my brain. So I definitely remember that. And she was very much a big thing here. So I was familiar with it. Yeah.
I think a lot of people think that your character, like her, is also real. And while she's not, there is some basis someone else. What was your sort of what were your marching orders in terms of like this character and whether she was supposed to be someone real or not?
I mean, we definitely wanted to make her amalgamation, specifically also to bump her up to be able to go toe to toe with Belle. This was in the same way that I think Caitlin and Sam Strauss, our writer creator, wanted to create their version of Belle, which was someone who they could then understand the psyche of and try and piece together parts of her backstory, her history. It was sort of the same thing with Al Miller. Although there is some basis in reality, there's also she represents a collection of wellness influences at that in that period of time, which was a huge part of my youth growing up. I mean, that was something that I was maybe 16, 17, very privy to and absorbing at a young age. And it was everywhere. It was, wellness influences going like, you should only eat raw food, or like, I only eat fruits and vegetables. And like, this is how you, like, it was also very much imbued with the I like beauty standards and women's body images, I think, at the time, and social media suddenly became a really big platform for that. So we wanted to create a collection of that, like those traits in an individual, because there were so many different women having different projections of that, but also we needed a character that could go toe to toe with Belle, and we wanted to see how those those influences were bouncing off each other, and this new language that they were creating, these new audiences and communities that we're creating without guardrails. So it was something we wanted to definitely make our own version of. But I mean, I went back and looked at all the old blogs that people had created that had since like sort of disappeared or had like gone on their old Instagrams and like Pinterest and like deep diving suddenly back into this world of what it looked like in the early 2010s. It was mind blowing. I was like, oh my God, this is terrifying.
Do you think things have changed substantially? And if so, for the better or not necessarily?
Yes and no. I do think that there is a little bit more transparency, or there's a little bit more understanding from the public that you cannot take everything online as fact or to be true, and that there is a a different pedestal that I think we're putting influencers on. I remember like there was a time where there was like celebrities promoting certain diuretics, like hashtag tummy tea or something. And it was essentially just like skinny tea. Like that's a crazy thing. But I remember the moment that there were all these lawsuits because they were basically promoting something that was then and not disclosing that they were getting paid for it. So I remember like moments where there became, I guess, it became a little bit more transparent, but at the same time, I think there's more information than ever. And we spend more time on our phones than ever before. And we live out a part of our lives, a lot of our lives on our phones. And I think you're seeing it right now. Like there's still so many debates around like health, and we're seeing it in Congress with RFK Jr. and like Maha, and it's not like that's suddenly gone away. If anything, like it's cemented its place in the White House. Like it's so I don't think it's gotten better. I don't know what the answer is, but I do think that it's something to be wary of as much now as it wasn't.
You think this story resonates differently in Australia versus the US, or not necessarily because of how things are governmentally?
Not necessarily. I think that our phones have made us, I mean, we're globalized now, and our phones have connected us from, place and time zone. And so I don't think that it really, I think it absolutely translates um, between countries. I also do think like, Bell was incredibly successful globally. She was one of the first apps ever put on the Apple Watch. Like that is a huge accomplishment, and it's sad that it was then tainted with how her terrible motives. But we've seen these stories play out so many times as well. Like these scammer stories are very common and they're alive and well. Like you see it with creating Anna, or sorry, inventing Anna, or you had it with like Elizabeth Holmes. Like these people are like they're global. So no, I feel like if anything, it maybe made it seem like, oh, this isn't just a isolated incident. This is happening everywhere.
I was specifically thinking of Inventing Anna and The Dropout as
Yeah.
other comparable points. That it's like if you've seen those and you want to see the next great absurd, scandal, this is the one. But what I think this one does that's a little bit different is it shows you the really intense personal struggles that both Belle and Mila go through, which is a sort of contradiction because they live their lives online so much. And especially for Mila, who just wants to warn the world about Belle, she just can't get anyone to listen because that's not how you do it. You don't just I mean, sometimes you do these days, but I feel like especially then that's not the kind of thing that happens. So it's very interesting to see the like global like perception and then the really behind the curtain here.
Yeah, I mean, and it is how we live our lives now. It's this idea that we project to people, these parasocial relationships, and then the reality of the world that you're living in. It's become even harder to disconnect from than ever, I think. It's just really fascinating to see it play out in those early days of social media. I think those early 2010s, where it was so new and so raw, it was still a little bit like earnest, whereas now it just feels like really glossy, or it feels a little bit more um what's the word, like manipulative. Or like people are very aware of how they're presenting themselves, whereas then I feel like there was a little bit more of an earnestness around it, and why people could then get into trouble a little bit more.
And of course there's that moment where Mila gets, caught, on tape, yelling about how this she's being given something that's not natural, etc. And it's not a good look for her, but it also is like it's the epitome of everything she's experiencing, and it's hard to find fault with her in that moment because she really is going through she's just taking it out on the wrong person.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this idea of like being able to control your own narrative is so central to this story, and for Miller's story. The idea that she's also trying to have autonomy with her body and trying to find her own answers and take responsibility for what she deems as like failures that she has imposed upon herself. It's this idea of then like controlling your own narrative, but then also controlling the idea of like what other people are seeing, and then not knowing how to direct, where to direct that energy. Yeah.
You create such a great adversarial relationship with Belle, but I assume you have a warmer relationship in person with Caitlin Dever, and also curious what you think of her Australian accent.
I mean, I think she nailed it. It is. I say this and I really mean it. It's the best Australian accent I've heard from a non-Australian. I really mean it. I think she is such a talented actress. She's so hardworking, and I know she really had worked hard on the accent. She was working with a dialect coach. And I think she nailed it. It's been really fun because we've been then working together again, and every now and then she'll like bust it out. It's just really good. But working with her it's so fun. I think she's so talented, and she's such a great scene partner to work opposite. And we had wished we'd had more scenes together in Apple Cider Vinegar because it was so fun to work together. Um, and just also to see those characters bounce off one another and sort of like edge each other on, go toe to toe is really fun. So, I mean, she's so great. I love her.
I know you've already been part of a very popular zombie franchise in Fear the Walking Dead. How does it feel to go from a project like apple cider vinegar, so rooted in the world around us today, to something that is so dystopian and even though our world can be dystopian too, just definitely unrecognizable from this?
You mean like for Fear the Walking Dead?
Yeah.
Or yeah. I mean, it was nice to be sort of rooted in reality, I gotta say. Like they offer very different sort of emotional problems. I do kind of go like I'm always finding these jobs that are like somewhat existential and very emotionally traumatic. So part of me is like, I need to maybe try something else. But it's, I don't know, it was also, they're so different. I think like something like Fear the Walking Dead is so physical. There's so much physicality. You're in the elements. There's a lot of stunt work. There's really big setups. It's so much about the world as it is about the character. A you're a part of a much bigger space and environment. Whereas I think doing something like apple cider vinegar, it's a little bit more intimate and it's just so much more internal. And I think that was really exciting to explore. But it was also fun that it was its own period piece in a way. Like we were working within the 2010s timeline, and so things like the fashion at the time was like kind of crazy and like really fun to go back in time and source pieces of clothing from that moment where it was like everyone was obsessed with like cobalt blue was such a thing, and like these Aztec necklaces and like bandeau dresses, and it was like whoa, like it really was its own time capsule, so that was really fun. But I guess yeah, I think it was, I think this was, they're all their own worlds, but this was sort of, I think those sort of big genre pieces, the world is so established. So it creates external factors that you're working within. So that's always the thing that defines it for me. Like whether it was The 100 or Fear the Walking Dead or even like Monsterverse, it's like the world is so big that it becomes a part of it. Whereas things that are a little bit more rooted in reality, I think maybe a bit more in like there's the internal battle that probably comes out, or the internal environment, if that makes sense.
Well, you were also part of something that I feel is unlike anything else. It was my favorite film of last year, even though now I think it's eligible for Best TV Movie at the Emmys, and that's It's Once Inside, which is it basically creates its own world, gets you so into it, and then completely messes with it. And I had a chance to speak with you and with all of your cast members also in person a while ago, which was really great. I keep telling everybody I see to see this film and to watch it on Netflix. But what I'm interested in most in talking about apple cider vinegar and that is that your character is also on social media all the time. And I feel like they couldn't be any more different, even though, Nikki is still clearly masking a lot of stuff. But I don't know when you filmed stuff, how that all worked, or if there was any sort of connection in your mind between these two characters.
I guess Yeah, it's so fascinating. I remember when I got this and I was like, am I playing an influencer again? But then I realized, like, no, they're completely different, obviously. And in the way that now it would almost be like saying, like, oh, they're online. Like, this is another character that's online. Like, we're all online now. I mean, influencer is a version of being online, obviously, but like, we're all absorbed in this social media relationship. But I did have that thought. I do remember being like, am I doing another influencer character? But I guess if Miller's the very early days and then early inception of social media, and I think the more earnest, maybe a little bit more innocent, those sort of like real, genuine desire to like reach out to community and to try and learn and grow, you see the complete opposite in Nikki, which is just like capitalizing on it, wanting to use it for her own advantage. Like, I mean, she's savvy, she's smart, she knows what she's doing, but she's using it as a tool. Whereas I think Miller is really trying to use it as a, I mean, as a tool, but like as far more of like a connective touch point. Nikki is using it just for her own selfish advantage, which is funny.
Have you heard from people about It's What's Inside? Do you feel like people have watched it and there's a lot of like diehard fans?
Yeah, it's one of those that I feel like is it kind of became a bit like a culty movie. Like if you've seen it, people are obsessed with it and love it, which makes me so happy because we all really feel so passionately about it. I loved making it. I It's one of those rare moments where you make something and with a group of people that you just love. It's tiny budget, but you film it really quickly. It felt like film school or something, and then it suddenly had genuine success. And so to see that transformation is amazing, and when people then respond to it, like it makes me so happy because we all really believe in it. So I feel like when people reference it, I'm like, you've got good taste.
And what can you share about what you have coming up?
Well, right now I've just worked with Caitlin again, because we just did, or we're doing Monsterverse together, which is great. And so that's been really nice, honestly, having like a friend to work with. And I think, so often you're working on a job and then when it ends, you're sort of like, I hope we get to work together again, but it's actually a lot rarer than people maybe imagine. Like oftentimes you don't get to work with people again, so being able to work together again is really special. And to work on like a really fun, big like movie is really fun. Yeah. So that's what I've been doing.
What do you like to watch on TV?
I mean, I try and keep up with everyone else, obviously. There's so much, but I just watched Adolescence, which was, I mean, mind-blowing, extraordinary, brilliant. I then finished White Lotus, of course. Um, Also loved the ending, although I feel like there were things that I wanted to know. There were some things that I was like, I wanted to focus more on some of the characters, and then I found out that they had to delete a lot of the scenes, or they didn't put them in. And I was like, I can tell because I wanted to see more. I was like, I wanted to see more of Chelsea and Saxon, and I wanted to see more of like blah blah blah. Like, so regardless, Mike White is a genius. I wish I could be on that show. And what else have I watched? I mean, I really am trying to keep. There's so much TV. I'm just trying to keep up with everyone at the moment, honestly.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to get to talk about your great projects and looking forward to what's coming next.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks so much.